Uh, I'm here to explain caching techniques and how they work uh, in the CPU or with the CPU. So first of all, we need to know what caching techniques are or what they do. So caching techniques. Caching techniques determine how data from main memory is mapped and managed within the cache, helping the CPU quickly find um, needed data and improving performance. So caching techniques they determine how data from the main memory is mapped and managed within the cache, and they help the CPU to quickly find the data it needs. Uh, what is or why do we need caching techniques, or why are they important? Simply because they improve performance. Caching techniques improve performance. Now, before we even head to the various caching techniques, we need to first understand what memory addressing is, because memory addressing plays a vital role caching techniques. So, what is memory addressing, or what is addressing? Addressing is how the CPU finds where data is stored in the memory. Addressing is how the CPU finds where data is stored in the memory, right? So every chunk of memory has its own address, and most of our computers, most of our computers we use are byte addressable, or they have byte addressable memory, meaning that each address corresponds to 1 byte. Each memory address corresponds to 1 byte. So how does memory addressing connects to hashing? So when the CPU wants something from the memory, it gives an address. So when the CPU gives the address, what the cache does is that it uses part of this address to decide where the data is, if the data is already here, and if so, where is the data? That is what the cache uses the part of the memory for. So it uses that in the decision making, more or less of like a decision making something. So it is easy to decide if the data is already here, and if it is there, or if it is in the cache, where is it now? Uh, Here's where the things get a little complicated. So after the cache uses part of the address to decide where the data is and how it's supposed to locate it, it breaks down the address. The cache breaks down the address into chunks, and each chunk has a job it's supposed to, you know, achieve. So the chunks are mainly three. They are split into three. Yes, they are split into three. That is the tag, the index, and then the offset. So let's go back to the caching techniques, right? So the tag, the index, the offset. So the cache breaks or splits the address into three, right? And these three, the tag, index, and offset, they have a function or a role they are supposed to, you know, play in the caching technique. They each have a role they are supposed to play in caching techniques. So what does the tag do? The tag identifies the block, right? The tag identifies the memory block, or the tag also we can also see the tag verifies if the data is the correct one. Okay, so the tag verifies if the data we are looking for is the correct one in the cache. And then moving on to index, the index locates a cache line in the cache. Now cache is made up of various cache lines. We'll get to that later. But then the function of the index is to locate a cache line in the cache. And then the function of the offset is to locate a byte inside a cache line. The offset locates a byte inside a cache line. So these three is what the address plays into once it gets into the cache. So once the address gets into the cache, or once the cache comes into contact with the address, it plays the address into these three so that it can perform the function very fast and very simple. So each chunk, right, has a function it's supposed to achieve, and they all at the end of the day they all work hand in hand to uh, make the caching technique possible. So as I explained, the tag verifies if the data is the correct one, the data we are looking for is the correct one. The index also locates the cache line in the cache, and the offset locates a byte inside a cache line. Now, let's move on to the caching techniques itself. We have direct mapping, we have fully associative mapping, and we have set associative mapping. Now let's tackle them one by one. Direct mapping. What is direct mapping? Now for direct mapping, each memory block maps to one cache line. Each memory block maps to one cache line. That means that each memory block can occupy one specific spot in the cache. Each memory block can occupy one specific spot in the cache. Now, what are the advantages of this method of caching? It is simple and it is fast because each memory has occupied one spot or a specific spot in the cache. But then the disadvantage here is that um, there are high conflict misses due to the fact that uh, two blocks two memory blocks cannot to the fact that um direct mapping is supposed to take sorry, in direct mapping each memory block is supposed to have one spot. So one memory block has one spot for itself, right? But what causes the high conflict misses is when two memory blocks want to occupy the same spot. When two memory blocks want to occupy the same spot, they try to kick each other out. So this one tries to kick this one out. This one tries to kick this one out. So there's a conflict. There's a conflict between the two blocks that are fighting for the spot. So that causes the high conflict misses, right? Or it causes it to it causes a clash. Yes. So that is the disadvantage in direct mapping. Now moving on to fully associative mapping. Fully associative mapping. For fully associative mapping, any memory block can go in any cache line. Any memory block can go in any cache line, meaning any memory block can fit anywhere in the cache. Any memory block can fit anywhere in the cache. Over here, the address is only split into the tag and the offset. The pros are that it is flexible. It's flexible, but at the same time, the disadvantage is that it is very slow and it is complex. So it's not ideal for uh, our caching, or it's not the ideal caching technique to use. It's not the ideal caching technique to use here, as well as the direct mapping because it also has high conflict misses. That's also not really ideal for or the ideal caching technique that our cache should use. Although it's simple and fast, but it still has the disadvantage of the high conflict misses. As well as this one is also flexible, but it's slow and complex. Now moving on to the set associative mapping. This is the best caching technique so far because it is a balance between the two, the direct and then the fully associative. It's like an in between, technique. So it offers what the direct and the fully associative offer you, but then with no uh, cons or with no disadvantages. So what is the set associative mapping technique? So it blocks, the blocks map to a set of lines, right? So meaning you divide the cache into groups. You divide the cache into groups, and each memory block can go into any spot in its group. That's what this basically means. So the example they cited, the a four-way is equal to 4 lines per set. So as I said, you decide you divide the cache into groups, right? And each memory block can go into any spot in each group. That is what the set associative mapping is. Over here, the address is also split into, three. That's the tag, the set index, and the offset. The advantages are it balances flexibility and speed. Flexibility and speed. So flexibility is what the fully associative offers you, but with the disadvantage of it being slow. And then the speed is what direct mapping offers you, with the disadvantage of the conflict or the high conflict messages. So the set associative combines those two properties of the direct mapping and the fully associative, and offers you, a balance between them. So offers you a balance between them. So this is the best caching technique, our cache uses, or most of our CPUs use, our modern CPUs, they use this set associative mapping cache technique. That is um, what they use, our CPUs, our modern CPUs. That's what they use. So let's look at this example. We have a 4 megabyte cache, a 64 byte line, which is directly mapped. So this is an example of a directly mapped caching technique, or a direct mapping caching technique. So as I explained earlier on, the cache will divide the address into three parts. So the address here is a 32-bit address. So this 32-bit address will be divided into three. It will be divided into three. The offset will have its share of the address, that is 6 bits. That is 6 bits. The index will have its fair share of the address, that is 16 bits. And then the tag will be the remainder of what is left of the address. So the offset takes 6 bits out for its operation. The index takes 10 bits, the index takes 16 bits out for its operation. And then the tag uses the remainder of what is left for its operation. So that's all for caching techniques. That's for caching techniques.